The bright lights of the terminal felt like they were shining directly into Tom's eyes. It was not just the brightness, it was the sheer volume of everything happening all at once. The air in the large building was stale and smelled faintly of burnt coffee and cleaning products, a mix that made Tom feel a little nauseous. But he did not show it. He had to be strong. He kept his back straight and his grip on the handle of the suitcase tight, but his real focus was on the person walking just half a step behind him. Lucy was his younger sister. She was 22 years old, but in many ways she saw the world much differently than most adults did. She had always been special. Since they were kids, Tom had been the one to look out for her. Their parents had passed away a few years ago, leaving Tom as the only family Lucy really had left. He did not mind the responsibility. In fact, he loved her more than anything else in the world. But days like today, when they had to travel, were incredibly hard for both of them. "Stay close, Luce," Tom said, turning his head slightly. He kept his voice low and calm, trying to cut through the noise of the echoing announcements. "I am right here, Tommy," Lucy whispered back. She was clutching the strap of her small backpack with both hands, her knuckles turning white. She walked with her head down, her eyes fixed on the moving patterns of the carpet beneath her feet. She did not like looking up. There were too many people, too many legs walking fast, too many voices shouting into phones or laughing with friends. It was all too much for her sensitive mind. The airport was packed. It seemed like everyone in the city was trying to get somewhere at the exact same time. Tom guided Lucy toward the large signs that pointed toward the security checkpoint. This was the part he had been dreading for weeks. He had talked to Lucy about it every night for the past 7 days. He showed her pictures on the internet. He explained exactly what would happen. They would take off their shoes. They would put their bags in a plastic box. They would walk through a machine that beeped. He thought he had prepared her for everything. He thought he had prepared himself, too. But as they got closer to the maze of barriers and the lines of people, he felt his chest tighten. He looked at Lucy. She was starting to breathe faster, her chest rising and falling in short, sharp bursts. She stopped walking for a second and pressed her hands over her ears. "It's too loud," she said, her voice shaking. Tom stopped immediately. He stepped in front of her, using his own body to block the view of a rushing businessman who almost bumped into them. Tom gave the man a polite nod, then turned his full attention to his sister. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I know it's loud, Lucy," Tom said, speaking slowly and clearly. "But remember what we practiced. You just look at me. You don't have to look at anyone else. Just look at my back. Follow my shirt." Lucy looked up, her eyes wide and watery. She saw Tom's kind face and nodded slowly. "Okay, just your shirt." "Good girl," Tom smiled. "We are almost there, just a few more minutes." They started moving again. Tom walked slowly, matching his pace to hers. He felt the eyes of other travelers on them. People are usually in a hurry at airports. They want to take their shoes off and jackets off and get through the line as fast as they can so they can sit down and wait for their planes. Tom and Lucy were moving at a snail's pace. He heard a heavy sigh from a woman standing behind them. He heard someone tapping their foot on the floor. He ignored them. He had learned a long time ago that worrying about what strangers thought was a waste of energy. The only thing that mattered was Lucy's safety and comfort. They were flying to see a specialist doctor. It was a very important trip. Lucy had been having trouble sleeping lately, and her anxiety was getting worse. Tom had saved up every extra penny he had from his job at the warehouse to pay for the tickets. He just wanted her to get better. He wanted her to be happy. The stress of the travel was worth it if it meant getting her the help she needed. As they neared the entrance to the security area, the crowd squeezed together. The space narrowed. There were ropes on metal stands keeping everyone in a zigzag line. The noise seemed to get louder here. The security officers were shouting commands. "Laptops out, belts off." "Take your tickets out." Lucy flinched every time one of them shouted. She grabbed the back of Tom's shirt with both hands, burying her face in the fabric. "It's okay," Tom said softly, patting her hand that was gripping his shirt. "We are doing great. We are next." He looked ahead. There were 5 lanes open. The lines moved like slow rivers of tired people. Tom chose the one that looked the shortest, hoping to get Lucy out of this stressful environment as quickly as possible. He watched the people in front of them. An older couple was taking off their coats. A mother was trying to fold up a stroller while holding a baby. Everyone looked frustrated. Tom looked down at Lucy again. She was humming a quiet tune to herself, a coping mechanism she had used since she was a little girl. It was a song their mother used to sing to her. Hearing it made Tom's heart ache a little, but it also made him happy that she remembered it. "What are you singing?" Tom asked gently, trying to distract her from the chaos. "The Moon's Song," Lucy whispered, not looking up. "That's a good one," Tom said. "Keep singing it, Luce. Sing it a little louder if you want." She shook her head. "Too loud?" "Okay, quiet is good too," Tom said. They took a few shuffling steps forward. They were now only a few feet away from the tables where you have to empty your pockets. Tom could see the gray plastic bins stacked up. He could see the X-ray machine humming away, eating bags and spitting them out on the other side. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. He had to be the calm one. If he panicked, she would panic. He reached into his pocket and pulled out their boarding passes. He checked the names one last time: Thomas Miller and Lucy Miller. It was real. They were really doing this. "Sir, move up," a voice boomed from the front. Tom flinched this time. It was a security officer standing near the metal detectors. He was shouting at the line, telling people to close the gaps. Tom looked at Lucy. She had stopped humming. She was frozen. She pressed herself closer to Tom, trying to hide inside his shadow. "It's okay," Tom repeated, his voice steady. "He's just talking. He's not talking to us." But they were getting closer to the front. Tom watched the interaction of the people currently being screened. The officer was waving his wand and patting people down. He looked impatient. He was moving his hands quickly and checking watches, rolling his eyes at people who moved too slowly. Tom felt a knot form in his stomach. This was the wrong line. He could feel it. This officer was not in the mood for anyone who needed a little extra time. But it was too late to switch lanes now. They were trapped in the flow of the crowd. He looked at Lucy. She was trying to be brave. She was trying so hard to do exactly what he had told her to do. She looked so small standing there in the middle of the busy airport. Tom felt a surge of protective love. He wished he could pick her up and carry her through the line, but he knew she had to do it herself. She had to learn to navigate the world, even the scary parts of it. "All right, Luce," Tom said, squeezing her hand. "We are going to take our shoes off now, just like we practiced." Lucy looked at her sneakers. They were white with little blue stars on them. She loved these shoes. She did not want to take them off and walk on the dirty floor in her socks. "Do I have to?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Yes, but only for a minute," Tom promised. "Then we put them right back on. I'll help you." They stepped up to the gray metal tables. The surface was cold and hard. Tom let go of Lucy's hand for just a moment to take off his jacket. As soon as his hand left hers, Lucy looked panicked. She reached out for him, her hand grasping at the air. "I'm right here," Tom said quickly, putting his arm around her shoulder. "I'm not going anywhere." He helped her unzip her hoodie. Her hands were shaking too much to grip the small zipper. He did it for her, gently sliding it down her arms. He folded it and placed it in the plastic bin. Then he knelt down on one knee in front of her. "Your turn, superstar," he said with a smile. He untied her laces. He loosened the knots. He helped her slide her foot out of the first sneaker. He placed it in the bin, then the other one. He placed them side by side next to her hoodie. "Good job," Tom said, looking up at her. "See." "You're doing it." Lucy looked down at her socks. They were pink with little dots. She wiggled her toes. She looked terrified. The noise of the airport seemed to be getting louder and louder, like a pressure pushing down on her ears. The fluorescent lights above them were flickering slightly, adding to the confusion. Tom stood up. He took off his own shoes and placed them in a bin. He put his bag on the table. He felt the eyes of the people behind them burning into his back. He heard a man cough loudly, a signal of impatience. He picked up the bins. He held one in each hand. He looked at Lucy. She was standing there in her socks, looking vulnerable and small. She was waiting for him to tell her what to do next. "Okay," Tom said, nodding toward the metal detector. "We are going to walk through there. No metal, just us." He reached out his hand. Lucy grabbed it tight. Her palm was sweaty and her grip was iron tight. "I'm scared, Tommy," she whispered. Tom looked at her, his heart breaking for her. He wanted to scream at everyone to stop and be quiet. He wanted to demand respect and patience for his sister. But he knew that would only make things worse. It would cause a scene, and Lucy hated scenes. "I know," Tom said softly, "but I am right here. I won't let go, not for 1 second." He took a deep breath and guided her toward the machine. The officer in the uniform was standing right there, looking at them with a stern face. He held out his hand, gesturing for them to move forward. The moment of truth had arrived. They were about to step into the scanner, and Tom had no idea that the hardest part of their journey was just about to begin. Tom took a deep breath and gave Lucy's hand a gentle squeeze. They stood in front of the tall, white metal archway that looked like a doorway to nowhere. It hummed with a low, vibrating sound that made the air feel heavy. The security officer standing next to it made a rolling motion with his hand, his face blank and bored. He had seen thousands of people that day, and to him, Tom and Lucy were just two more bodies slowing down the line. "Okay, Lucy," Tom said, keeping his voice as steady as he could. "We walk through it together, nice and easy." Lucy looked up at the machine with wide, frightened eyes. She gripped Tom's hand so tightly that her fingernails dug into his palm, but he didn't pull away. He welcomed the pain. It reminded him that she was right there with him. They took their first step onto the rubber mat, then the second. They passed through the archway. Beep! A loud, harsh noise shattered the quiet moment. Lucy jumped as if she had been pinched. She let out a small yelp and tried to turn around to run back the way they came, but the machine was right behind her. She froze, her back pressed against the cold metal frame, her chest heaving up and down. It's okay," Tom said quickly, stepping back to her. He put his hands on her shoulders to ground her. "It's just a noise, Lucy. It didn't hurt you. Look at me." The officer let out a long, exaggerated sigh that sounded like a deflating tire. He walked over, holding a black wand in his hand. He did not look at Lucy with kindness. He looked at her as if she were a broken piece of luggage that was blocking the conveyor belt. "Move to the side, please," the officer barked. "You can't stand in the machine. Step out." Lucy didn't understand. She was paralyzed by the noise and the shouting. She looked at Tom, her eyes swimming with tears. "She needs a second," Tom said to the officer, his voice firm but polite. "The noise scared her." "We don't have seconds," the officer snapped. "Move her." Tom gently guided Lucy out of the machine and over to the designated area for extra screening. The officer followed, waving the wand impatiently. He ran it up and down Tom's arms and legs. When it didn't beep, he grunted and turned his attention to Lucy. The officer waved the wand around Lucy's waist. He moved fast, not caring that the wand brushed against her side. Lucy flinched and tried to swat it away, a natural reaction to something strange touching her. "Hey, watch it," Tom said, stepping in between them. "Tell her to keep her hands down," the officer said, glaring at Tom, "or I can't clear her." Tom looked at Lucy. "Lucy, please put your hands down, let him finish. Then we can get our shoes." Lucy slowly lowered her hands, but she was shaking all over. Her lip was quivering. The officer finished the check and marched back to his post by the conveyor belt. "Clear," he shouted, not bothering to look back at them. "Grab your stuff and move along." Tom let out a breath he felt like he had been holding for a lifetime. "Okay, crisis averted," he whispered to himself. He took Lucy's hand again. "Come on, Luce. Let's get our shoes on. We can sit on that bench over there." They walked over to the plastic bins that had come out the other side of the X-ray machine. Tom's suitcase was there, and Lucy's small backpack was sitting on top of his jacket. He picked up his bag and set it on the floor. Then he grabbed the bin containing Lucy's white sneakers and her pink hoodie. The bench nearby was crowded with people tying their shoes and gathering their belongings. There was barely any space. Tom decided they would just put their shoes on standing up. He could balance himself, but he knew Lucy would have trouble. He took his sneakers out of the bin and slipped them on his feet, tying the laces quickly. He kept one eye on Lucy the whole time. She was standing there in her socks, staring at the open bin in front of her. She looked confused. The adrenaline from the scare at the metal detector had made her forget what she was supposed to do next. "Your shoes, Lucy," Tom said gently, pointing to the bin. "Pick them up." Lucy reached into the bin. Her hands were trembling so much that she had trouble gripping the heel of the sneaker. She managed to pull one shoe out, but as she lifted it, her other hand knocked against the side of the plastic bin. The bin tipped over. It hit the hard floor with a loud asterisk clatter asterisk. Lucy's other shoe tumbled out along with her hoodie, a small plastic bag of toiletries, and a hairbrush. The items scattered across the polished concrete floor. Lucy gasped. She looked down at the mess, panic washing over her face. She dropped to her knees immediately, trying to gather everything up. She was scrambling, grabbing the hairbrush and the bag of soap, trying to shove them back into the bin. She was muttering to herself, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," over and over again. The line of people behind them had come to a stop. They couldn't move forward because Lucy was kneeling on the floor in the way. A collective groan went through the crowd. "Oh, come on," a man in a business suit shouted from a few feet away. "Some of us have planes to catch. Get her out of the way," another voice added. Tom knelt down beside Lucy. "It's okay, Lucy." "Don't worry, I'll help," he said softly. He reached for the shoe. But then the security officer who had scanned them stepped forward. He looked at the mess on the floor, then at Lucy, who was frantically trying to clean it up with tears streaming down her face. He didn't offer to help. He didn't ask if she was all right. A smirk appeared on the officer's face. He looked at his fellow officer standing next to the metal detector and let out a chuckle. "Looks like someone needs a babysitter," the officer said loudly. His voice carried clearly over the noise of the terminal. "Maybe she shouldn't be flying alone if she can't even handle a bin." The other officer laughed, a short, barking sound. Tom froze. His hand stopped in midair as he reached for the shoe. The words hit him like a punch in the stomach. He felt the heat rise up his neck and into his face. It wasn't just the insult, it was the cruelty of it. It was the way they were laughing at his sister when she was already down. Lucy heard the laughter. She stopped scrambling. She looked up from the floor, her tear-streaked face turning toward the officers. She didn't understand exactly what they had said, but she understood the tone. She knew that sound. She knew what laughter meant when it wasn't kind. She looked at Tom, her eyes full of hurt and shame. "Tommy," she whispered. "Why are they laughing?" Tom swallowed hard. He wanted to stand up and yell at the officer. He wanted to tell him that she was a human being with feelings. He wanted to demand an apology. But he looked at Lucy, kneeling there in her socks on the dirty floor, surrounded by impatient strangers. If he made a scene, it would only scare her more. It would only make the ordeal last longer. So Tom swallowed his anger. He forced it down deep inside him, even though it tasted bitter. He picked up Lucy's white sneaker and held it out to her. "They aren't laughing at you, Lucy," Tom lied, his voice thick with emotion. "They are just talking about something else. Put your shoe on, please." Lucy took the shoe, but she was crying harder now. She couldn't see the laces through her tears. She tried to put her foot in, but she missed, and she stumbled slightly. The officer rolled his eyes again and shook his head. "Unbelievable," he muttered, just loud enough for Tom to hear, "holding up the whole line." Tom felt a hand on his shoulder. It was the businessman from behind. "Hey, buddy, can you move her? You're blocking the flow." Tom looked up. The faces around them were a blur of impatience and annoyance. No one saw a scared young girl struggling. All they saw was an obstacle. All they saw was a delay. "We are moving as fast as we can," Tom said, his voice trembling slightly. He turned back to Lucy. He ignored the shoes for a moment. He grabbed the backpack and shoved the toiletries and brush inside. He picked up the hoodie and put it around Lucy's shoulders. "Stand up, Lucy," he said, helping her to her feet. "Just stand up." She stood there, shivering in her socks, clutching her backpack to her chest like a shield. She looked so small in the middle of the vast, busy airport. Tom felt a wave of helplessness wash over him. He felt like he had failed her. He had brought her here, into this place that was too loud, too mean, and too fast for her gentle soul. He knelt down one last time. He didn't care about his pants getting dirty. He quickly put her sneakers on her feet and tied the laces in a double knot, just in case. He did it as fast as he possibly could, his fingers fumbling slightly in his haste. "Okay," Tom said, standing up and grabbing his own bag. "We are done, let's go." He took Lucy's hand. It was cold and clammy, she wouldn't look at him. She kept her head down, staring at the floor, defeated by the laughter and the shouting. They began to walk away from the security checkpoint, leaving the cruel officer and the impatient crowd behind. Tom felt his eyes stinging, but he refused to cry. He had to be the strong one. He had to get her to the gate. He just wanted to find a quiet corner where they could sit and she could calm down. As they walked briskly toward the escalators, Tom heard the officer's voice behind them one last time, making another comment to his coworker about special treatment and travelers who can't handle it. Tom gritted his teeth. He squeezed Lucy's hand. "I'm sorry," he whispered to her, even though she hadn't done anything wrong. I'm so sorry, Luce. They were almost at the moving walkway when Tom suddenly felt a presence step in front of them, cutting off their path. He stopped abruptly, pulling Lucy back to keep her from crashing into the person. Tom looked up, ready to apologize, ready to get out of whoever's way it was. But the person standing there didn't look impatient. He didn't look annoyed. He was a man with dark hair and a gentle face, dressed in a simple dark jacket and a baseball cap. He was standing still, looking directly at them. He had seen what happened. He had heard the mockery. And he wasn't going to let them walk away feeling like that. Tom's heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He pulled Lucy closer to his side, bracing himself for another confrontation. He assumed the man standing in front of them was just another impatient traveler, someone who was going to tell them to get out of the way or complain about them blocking the path. Tom opened his mouth to apologize, to say they were moving, to say anything to just avoid more conflict. "Excuse us," Tom started, his voice sounding tired and shaky. "We are just trying to get through." The man in the dark jacket didn't move. He didn't look angry. In fact, he looked incredibly calm. He held up a hand gently, not in a stop gesture, but in a way that said, "Wait, it's okay. Don't worry about it," the man said. His voice was deep but soft, with a roughness to it that made it sound natural and real. He looked from Tom to Lucy, and his expression changed. It wasn't a look of pity. It was a look of understanding. Then the man turned around. He didn't walk away. He turned his body so he was facing the security checkpoint they had just left. The officer was still standing there, leaning against the metal table, laughing with his colleague about the slow passengers. The stranger took a few slow steps back toward the officers. He didn't shout, he didn't wave his arms. He just walked up to the metal barrier that separated the waiting area from the secure zone and stood there. His presence was different now. It was solid. It was heavy. "Hey," the stranger said. It wasn't a loud yell, but the officer heard it. The laughter died instantly. The officer turned around, ready to bark another order, assuming it was just another confused passenger. But when he saw who was standing there, his mouth snapped shut. He stood up straighter, smoothing his uniform. The stranger leaned in slightly over the barrier. He didn't break eye contact with the officer. "Is there a problem here?" he asked. "It looked like you were having a pretty good laugh at someone else's expense." The officer's face turned a shade of red. He glanced at his partner, then back at the stranger. "No, sir, no problem," the officer stammered. "Just standard procedure, we have to keep the line moving." "Right," the stranger said slowly. He nodded, but his eyes stayed serious. "Keeping the line moving, I get that. But there is a difference between keeping the line moving and being a bully. These people are just trying to get home, or get somewhere safe. There is no need to mock them." The officer looked down at his feet. The power had completely shifted. A moment ago, the officer had the badge and the authority. Now he looked small. He looked like a child being scolded by a parent. I didn't mean anything by it, sir," he mumbled. "Okay," the stranger said. He held the gaze for another second longer, making sure the message had landed. Then he straightened up. "Just be decent. It's not that hard." With that, the stranger turned his back on the officer. He didn't wait for a reply. He didn't care if the officer agreed or not. He walked back over to where Tom and Lucy were standing. The entire area around them had gone quiet. People who were rushing before were stopping to watch. They sensed that something important had just happened. The cruel laughter from the checkpoint was gone, replaced by a heavy, respectful silence. Tom stood there, his mouth slightly open. He recognized the man now. He had seen that face on a screen many times before. It was Keanu Reeves. But seeing him in person, in the middle of an airport, standing up for his sister, it felt unreal. It felt like a movie scene, but the emotions were too raw for it to be fake. Keanu stopped in front of them. He didn't act like a celebrity. He didn't ask for a photo. He just looked at Tom with sincere eyes. "Are you guys okay?" he asked. Tom let out a long breath that he felt like he had been holding for hours. His shoulders slumped as the tension left his body. Yeah, I think so," Tom whispered. He felt a sudden lump in his throat. He was so grateful, but he didn't know how to say it. "Thank you, that guy. He was just being so mean." "Some people forget how to be human when they put a uniform on," Keanu said quietly. He glanced back toward the checkpoint one last time, then focused his attention on Lucy. Lucy was still hiding behind Tom's arm. She had stopped crying, but she was wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her hoodie. She was peeking out at the stranger, curious but scared. Keanu didn't try to force his way in. He didn't grab her hand or pat her head. He knew better. He slowly crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level. He rested his arms on his knees, making himself look small and non-threatening. He didn't stand over her, he sat with her. "Hi," Keanu said softly. Lucy looked at him. She looked at his baseball cap. She looked at his kind eyes. She didn't say anything. "I saw your shoes earlier," Keanu said, nodding toward her feet. "The ones with the blue stars, those are really cool shoes." Lucy looked down at her sneakers. She wiggled her foot a little. "Tommy tied them," she whispered. "He did a good job," Keanu said. He smiled, and it was a warm, genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "My shoes are always coming untied." "It's annoying, isn't it?" Lucy nodded slowly. A tiny bit of the fear left her face. This man wasn't shouting, he wasn't rushing, he was talking about shoes. "Airports are really loud," Keanu said, keeping his voice low. "I don't like the noise much either, it hurts my ears sometimes." Lucy looked at him, surprised. "It hurts mine too," she said. "Yeah, I thought so," Keanu nodded. "You were doing really well, though. You walked through that scary machine like a pro. I get nervous doing that, too." Lucy finally let go of Tom's shirt. She stood up a little straighter. "You do?" "Absolutely," Keanu said. "I always hold my breath. I think I'm going to set off the alarm even though I know I didn't do anything wrong." "It's scary." Tom watched this interaction with a sense of wonder. He had been trying to calm Lucy down for the last 20 minutes, trying to reason with her and tell her it was okay. But somehow hearing this famous stranger say that he was also scared made it real for Lucy. It made her feel normal. She wasn't the only one who was afraid. Keanu reached into his pocket slowly. He pulled out a small, wrapped chocolate candy. He held it out to her on his open palm, not forcing it, just offering it. "For the brave traveler," he said. Lucy hesitated for a second, looking at Tom. Tom nodded at her. She reached out and took the candy. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're welcome," Keanu said. He stood up slowly, groaning just a little bit as his knees popped, which made Lucy smile just a fraction. He looked at Tom. The playfulness in his face faded into a look of deep respect. "You're a good brother," Keanu said. He placed a hand on Tom's shoulder. It was a firm, grounding grip. "I can see how much you love her. Don't let anyone take that away from you." Tom felt tears prick his eyes again. He blinked them away rapidly. "She's my best friend," Tom said, his voice cracking. "She's lucky to have you," Keanu replied. The airport announcement system dinged, and a loud voice echoed through the terminal, announcing a flight departure. Lucy flinched at the noise, shrinking back into Tom's side. Keanu looked toward the gate signs. "I should let you guys go. I'm sure you want to get out of here." "Yeah," Tom said. "We just need to find a quiet spot." "Well," Keanu said, looking around, "there's a less busy seating area just past that big pillar over there. Usually it's pretty empty." He pointed to a spot about 50 yards away near a large window. "Thank you," Tom said. "For everything, I mean it." "You didn't have to do that." Keanu shrugged, shoving his hands back into his jacket pockets. "We're all just walking through the machine together, right? Might as well look out for each other." He gave them a small nod, then turned to walk away. He didn't look back for applause. He didn't wait for Tom to stop him again. He just adjusted his cap and headed toward his own gate, disappearing back into the stream of anonymous travelers. Tom watched him go for a moment, then looked down at Lucy. She was unwrapping the chocolate candy, her hands steady now. "Who was that, Tommy?" she asked, popping the candy into her mouth. Tom smiled, wiping a tear from his cheek before she could see it. He picked up his bag. "That was just a nice man, Lucy, a very nice man." "His knees hurt," Lucy observed. "Yeah," Tom laughed softly. "I think they do, come on. Let's go find that seat." They walked away from the security checkpoint, leaving the cruelty and the noise behind them. The heavy weight that had been pressing down on Tom's chest was gone. He felt lighter. The world still felt loud and busy, but it didn't feel quite as hostile as it had 10 minutes ago. For the first time that day, Tom felt like they were going to be okay. The walk to the quiet spot felt longer than it actually was. Mostly because Tom was still trying to process what had just happened. His legs felt a little like jelly, a mix of leftover adrenaline and the sudden drop in stress. He kept one hand firmly on the handle of his suitcase, and the other hand held loosely by Lucy. She wasn't gripping him as tightly as before, which was a good sign. They moved past the brightly lit shops that sold expensive perfumes and chocolates. The smell of cinnamon from a pretzel stand wafted through the air, but neither of them felt hungry. The airport was still a chaotic river of people rushing to their gates, talking loudly on phones and dragging heavy bags. But for Tom and Lucy, it was like they were in a separate bubble. The noise was just background noise now, not an attack. "There it is," Tom said softly, pointing ahead. Just like the stranger had said, there was a seating area tucked away behind a large, concrete pillar. It was near a massive window that looked out onto the runway. There were only a few people sitting there, scattered far apart, typing on laptops or reading books. It was an island of calm in the middle of the storm. They navigated their way around a family eating lunch and found two empty seats next to the window. The chairs were padded with blue fabric, a welcome change from the hard metal benches near the security check. Tom let out a long, deep sigh as he sat down. It felt like his body was made of heavy stones that were finally being set down. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and buried his face in his hands for a moment. He just needed 10 seconds, 10 seconds to breathe and not worry about anyone else. Lucy sat down next to him. She placed her small backpack on her lap and hugged it. She swung her legs back and forth, her sneakers, still with the double knots Tom had tied, banging gently against the metal leg of the chair. She looked out the window, her eyes wide as she watched a massive truck drive by with luggage carts trailing behind it. "Look, Tommy," she said, her voice quiet but calm. "Big trucks." Tom lifted his head and looked at her. Her face was clean now. She had wiped away the tears with her sleeve. The fear was gone from her eyes, replaced by the simple curiosity that was so natural to her. Seeing her like this made Tom's heart feel a little lighter. "Yeah, those are big trucks," Tom said, forcing a smile. "They carry all the suitcases." "Where is my suitcase?" she asked. "It's right here," Tom said, patting the handle of the bag at his feet. "Safe and sound?" Lucy nodded and looked back out the window. She seemed content. She unwrapped the chocolate the stranger had given her and took a small bite. She closed her eyes as she chewed, savoring the sweetness. Tom sat back and watched her. He thought about the man, Keanu. It still felt strange to think about it. Tom had seen movies with him in them, seen him on posters, but meeting him in real life was completely different. He didn't act like a movie star. He acted like a regular guy who saw something wrong and decided to fix it. What struck Tom the most was how he spoke to Lucy. He didn't speak down to her. He didn't treat her like a baby. He spoke to her like a person. He told her he was scared too. That was the magic of it, Tom realized. Lucy spent her whole life being told what to do, being told she was different, being treated like she didn't understand. But that man treated her like an equal. He shared his own fear to make her feel better. "He was nice," Lucy said suddenly, breaking the silence. She had chocolate on the corner of her mouth. "Who?" Tom asked, though he knew exactly who she meant. "The Hat Man," Lucy said. "The one with the candy." Tom reached over and gently wiped the chocolate off her face with his thumb. "Yes, he was very nice. He helped us. He said the machine was scary," Lucy continued. She looked at Tom seriously. "Is he scared of the beep?" Tom smiled. This was Lucy's way of processing information. She was connecting. "I think he is, Lucy. I think big, loud noises scare him too." Lucy nodded thoughtfully. "Okay. Then it's okay if I'm scared." Tom felt a warmth spread through his chest. "Yes, it is absolutely okay to be scared. Everyone gets scared. Even brave people." Lucy went back to eating her chocolate, seemingly satisfied with this answer. She turned her attention back to the window, where a plane was beginning to push back from the gate. Tom leaned his head back against the seat and looked up at the ceiling. He thought about the security officer again. The anger was still there, bubbling under the surface, but it was smaller now. It didn't consume him. The officer's cruelty had been neutralized by a stranger's kindness. It was amazing how quickly the balance could shift. One person tried to tear them down, and another person stepped in to lift them up. For a long time, Tom had felt like he was fighting this battle alone. Since their parents passed away, he felt like the entire weight of the world was on his shoulders. He had to be the father, the mother, the brother, and the protector. It was exhausting. There were days when he wanted to scream, days when he felt like he wasn't doing enough for her. Days like today, when the world seemed cruel and uninviting. But sitting there watching Lucy enjoy her chocolate and the view, he realized he wasn't completely alone. There were good people out there, people who paid attention, people who cared. The world wasn't entirely made of grumpy security officers and impatient travelers. There were people like the man in the jacket. Tommy, yeah, Luce, are we going to fly in the sky? We are, Tom said. We are going to go up in the clouds. Lucy frowned slightly. Will it be loud? Like the beep machine? A little bit when we take off, Tom said honestly. He didn't want to lie to her. But I have headphones for you, the big ones that block out the noise. And you can hold my hand the whole time, just like before. Okay, Lucy said. As long as the Hat Man isn't there, I don't want him to be scared. Tom let out a soft laugh. It felt good to laugh. Don't worry, he has his own plane to catch. He's going to be fine. They sat there for another 20 minutes. It was the most peaceful 20 minutes they had had all day. Tom watched the planes take off and land, marveling at the physics of it, but mostly just enjoying the stillness. He watched the people walking by in the terminal, a businessman running late, a mother wiping a child's face, an elderly couple holding hands. Everyone had a story. Everyone was fighting their own battle, rushing to their own destination. And for a moment, Tom felt a sense of camaraderie with them. He didn't feel angry at the rushing crowd anymore. He just felt human. He checked his watch. It was almost time to board. He knew the boarding process would be another challenge. It would involve lines and showing tickets and finding their seats on the plane. But the dread was gone. The heavy knot in his stomach had untied. If they could handle the security checkpoint and the mean officer, they could handle anything. And if things got too hard, he would just remember the man who stood in front of them and said, "Is there a problem here?" Tom stood up and stretched. He grabbed Lucy's backpack and put it over his shoulder. He held out his hand to her. "Ready to go, superstar?" he asked. Lucy hopped off the chair. She finished the last piece of chocolate and wiped her hands on her pants. She looked up at Tom and smiled. It was a genuine, happy smile that reached her eyes. "Ready," she said. "You feeling brave?" Lucy thought about it for a second. She looked at her shoes with the blue stars. She looked at the quiet spot they were leaving. She thought about the candy. "Yes," she said. "I am brave, you said so." "I did say so," Tom said, beaming at her, "and I was right." They walked away from the window, leaving the quiet pillar behind. As they merged back into the flow of passengers heading toward the gate, Tom walked a little taller. He didn't try to hide in the background anymore. He held his head up. He had his sister by his side. He had a renewed faith in people, and they had a plane to catch. The journey was just beginning, but the hardest part was behind them. The announcement finally came over the speakers, clear and crisp. "Now boarding all rows for Flight 420 to Denver." Tom stood up immediately. He didn't want to rush, but he also didn't want to be the last ones on the plane. He reached into his carry-on bag and pulled out the large, noise-canceling headphones he had bought specifically for this trip. They were pink and padded, covering the ears completely. "Okay, Lucy," Tom said, holding them out. "Time for the magic ears." Lucy took them with both hands. She knew the routine. She placed them over her ears, and the world immediately became quieter. The shouts of the gate agents, the roar of the rolling suitcases, and the chatter of the crowd all faded into a dull hum. She looked at Tom and smiled, her eyes relaxing. "Good?" Tom asked, raising his voice slightly so she could hear him through the muffle. Lucy gave him a thumbs up. "Quiet now," she said. They joined the line of people shuffling forward to present their tickets. The gate agent was a young woman with a bright red scarf tied around her neck. She smiled warmly as she scanned their passes. "Welcome aboard," she said to Lucy. "I love your headphones. They look very cozy." Lucy didn't say anything, but she looked at the woman's scarf and smiled. It was a small interaction, but Tom felt his shoulders drop another inch. This was how it was supposed to be, people treating people with basic kindness. They walked down the long, carpeted tunnel that led to the plane. The air smelled slightly of recycled oxygen and jet fuel, a scent that always signaled adventure to Tom, but anxiety to Lucy. He kept his hand on her back, guiding her forward. When they stepped into the plane, the aisle was narrow and cramped. People were already stuffing bags into the overhead compartments, bumping into one another. Tom gestured for Lucy to go in first. "Window seat," he reminded her. "You look for the clouds." Lucy scooted past the other passengers, murmuring a soft sorry whenever she bumped a knee with her backpack. She found their row and climbed into the seat by the window. Tom followed, taking the aisle seat to act as a buffer between her and the rest of the plane. He helped her buckle the seatbelt across her lap. It clicked shut with a loud snap. Lucy flinched slightly at the sound, but she didn't panic. She looked out the small, oval window at the busy tarmac outside. Ground crew workers in orange vests were waving glowing batons, directing luggage carts. "Are we going up soon?" Lucy asked, pulling one side of her headphones off to hear him. "Very soon," Tom said. "Just a few more minutes." The plane filled up. The seats around them were taken by a tired-looking businessman and a grandmother knitting a scarf. The engines started to whine, a low vibration that shook the floor beneath their feet. This was usually the moment Lucy would start to panic. The noise was the hardest part, but today was different. Lucy put her headphones back on. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She remembered what the stranger had told her. "I get nervous, too. I hold my breath." She placed her hand on her chest and breathed in and out, copying the rhythm Tom had taught her. Tom watched her, his heart swelling with pride. She was handling it. She was actually handling it. The plane began to taxi. It moved slowly away from the gate, then picked up speed as it headed toward the runway. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, muffled and friendly. "Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff." The plane turned onto the runway and paused. The engines roared to life, screaming loudly as the pilot pushed the throttles forward. The pressure pushed Tom back into his seat. The plane raced down the concrete, faster and faster. Tom reached over and grabbed Lucy's hand. She squeezed his hand tight, her knuckles turning white. She stared straight ahead, her eyes wide. "Look at the sky, Luce." "Look at the sky," Tom shouted over the roar. Lucy turned her head to the window. Just at that moment, the nose of the plane lifted. The ground fell away. The buildings, the cars, and the airport turned into toys. The gray runway vanished, replaced by a sea of fluffy white clouds. Lucy's gasp was audible even through the headphones. Her eyes went wide with wonder. The fear on her face washed away, replaced by pure awe. She let go of Tom's hand and pressed her fingertips against the plastic window. "We are flying, Tommy," she exclaimed. "We are birds." Tom laughed, a sound of pure relief. "Yes, we are birds." As the plane leveled off, the seatbelt sign dinged off. The flight attendants began moving up and down the aisle with drinks and snacks. The tension in the cabin dissolved. People opened their books and laptops. The grandmother in the row ahead turned around and smiled at Lucy. "You're a brave flyer," the woman said. "First time?" Lucy looked at Tom. He nodded at her to answer. "Yes," Lucy said proudly. "I wore my magic ears." "They work very well," the woman said. Tom sat back, finally able to relax. He looked out the window at the endless blue sky above the clouds. The day had started with such stress and cruelty. He remembered the heavy feeling in his chest when the security officer laughed at them. It felt like a lifetime ago. He thought about the man again. He wondered where he was sitting. Was he in first class? Was he sleeping with a hat over his eyes? Tom wished he could go find him and thank him properly. Not just for stepping in, but for saving his sister's spirit. Tom realized that the man hadn't just stopped a bully. He had given Tom a gift. He had taken a memory that could have been traumatic for Lucy, a day where she was mocked and humiliated, and turned it into a story where she was protected and validated. Lucy wouldn't remember the mean officer when she thought about this trip in the future. She would remember the hat man who gave her chocolate and told her he was scared too. That was the power of kindness. It could rewrite history. The flight was smooth. The sun shone brightly through the window, warming Lucy's face. She spent the next hour pointing out shapes in the clouds. She saw a rabbit. She saw a castle. She saw a big spoon. Tom watched her, listening to her quiet observations. He felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. The trip was for a doctor, and there would be challenges ahead. There would be more appointments, more crowded places, more moments where the world might not be understanding. But Tom knew now that they could handle it. He wasn't alone in the fight. There were good people out there, people who saw a struggle and didn't look away, people who used their voice to quiet the noise. About an hour before they were due to land, the pilot came on the speaker. "Folks, we are beginning our descent into Denver. The weather is beautiful, 75 degrees and sunny." Lucy turned to Tom. "We have to go down?" "Yes," Tom said, "but don't worry, going down is just like going up but backward. You can watch the cars get big again." I like the clouds, Lucy pouted. Me too, Tom said, but we have a job to do. Remember the doctor. Lucy nodded solemnly. She remembered the doctor. She wanted to sleep better at night. She wanted the bad dreams to go away. The plane dropped gently through the layer of clouds. The city appeared below them, a grid of streets and buildings nestled against the mountains. It was a beautiful sight. As the wheels touched the tarmac with a soft thud, Lucy clapped her hands. We did it, Tom repeated. When the plane came to a stop, everyone stood up at once, grabbing their bags. The rush to get off began immediately. Tom stayed seated, letting the people in the rows ahead of them clear out. Take your time, Luce, he said. They were in no hurry. They walked off the plane and into the jet bridge. The air in the Denver airport was crisp and dry. It felt different than the humid air they had left behind. The airport here was bright, with expansive windows showing off the Rocky Mountains in the distance. They walked slowly toward the baggage claim. They didn't have to run anymore. The journey was almost done for the day. As they stepped onto the moving walkway that would take them to the exit, Tom felt a lightness in his step. He looked at Lucy walking beside him. She was skipping a little, happy to be on solid ground again. She was humming that song again, the moon song. Tom reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He saw he had a few messages from friends checking in on them. He texted them back quickly. Landed, we're good. Great flight. He thought about sending a message to a friend, telling them about the celebrity they met. He could imagine the headline in his head. Guess who we met? But then he put the phone back in his pocket. It didn't matter who the man was, it mattered what he did. They reached the main hall of the airport. It was busy here too, but it felt different. The noise didn't seem as sharp, the people didn't seem as harsh. Tommy, Lucy asked, tugging on his sleeve. Yeah, Luce. I'm hungry, she said. Can we get a pretzel? Tom looked at her sweet face. He thought about the chocolate bar she had eaten earlier, but he didn't care. Today was a day for treats. Today was a day for celebrating small victories. Absolutely, Tom said, smiling. We can get the biggest pretzel they have. With extra salt, Lucy cheered, a small, joyful sound that made several people around them smile. They walked toward the food court, hand in hand. Tom wasn't thinking about the security officer anymore. He wasn't thinking about the humiliation or the anger. He was thinking about the mountains outside, the pretzel they were about to eat, and the kind stranger who reminded him that the world was full of light, if you just knew where to stand to see it. They had a long week ahead of them with the specialist, but for the first time in a long time, Tom felt ready. He squeezed Lucy's hand and she squeezed back. They were a team. And they were going to be just fine.